Well, hey, Regine, it's great to see you again.
I know it's been a few months and I've missed hanging out with you, but to be honest with you, I think I've missed drinking your wines just a little bit more.
Well, we have been super busy here. The harvest started early and we've been going full bore for a couple months now, but things are starting to slow down a little bit. And thought it was a great time to reconnect and talk about some of our wines that we made a couple years ago, and then some of the wines we're making as we speak.
Awesome. Before we get into the wine, though, I have to ask you, how do you feel about the 2021 harvest? How are things looking? Get me like excited for what I'm going to see in the future.
Well, I'm really excited about it, and all my colleagues in the valley are as well. I mean, we had a great summer. It was kind of a warm summer, but the end of the summer really just turned out perfectly. Kind of late August and September, we just had mild, warm weather. The fruit ripened really slowly. The vines are nice and healthy. Really excited about the wines.
Great. Well, I'm excited. I'm already ready to drink. If you need anyone to come down and taste anything for you, just let me know. I'm available for that. So what are we talking about today? I'm excited. I'm always excited, Russ, but I'm super excited because this is my first time tasting these two wines.
We're going to be tasting two of what we call our single block series Pinot Noir. And so, everything we make comes from our estate vineyard, and we really take a lot of TLC with all the different sections of the vineyard. But every year there's some blocks of the vineyard that really stand out and say, there's something special about this wine. And so that's what these two wines are. There are 4 barrels from 2 different blocks of the vineyard. So 4 barrels is not a lot of wine. It's about 100 cases of wine. These two wines, it's a little bit of a tease because these two wines are almost sold out because they just went out to our wine club in our fall shipment.
Okay.
But that's really what we're trying to do with these wines, is really help the people that love our wines sort of learn what makes up those wines. What's different about this block compared to that block? What's special about this clone of Pinot Noir compared to that clone? How does elevation change things?
Well, you mentioned, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but you mentioned clone. And we always talk about, because I like to drink your wines, what's in the bottle, but we rarely stop to talk about what's on the bottle, right? Your labels give us a clue as to how special these wines are. So let's take a few minutes and talk about which one do you want to start with, first of all? Let me ask you.
Sure. Let's start with the Block 9 Pommard clone.
Okay. So just in reading this, I see Pommard, I think Burgundy, Côte de Nuit, correct? Okay, check, let me know if I'm wrong. I've been studying. Tell us what that means. What's the Pommard clone and how did you get your hands on it?
Sure. Well, first, let's start with the word clone.
Okay.
So a clone is genetically identical to its mother. And so, when you're planting a vineyard, you don't take grape seeds and plant them. What you're doing is taking cuttings from another plant. So when you take a cutting, all the cuttings from that plant are genetically identical. So that's why you call it a clone. When you look at the names of these clones, some of them are really very specific and can really be traced back to something precise. Some of them have a little more kind of history and romance associated with them and a little less precision. And so I would say of the two we're tasting today, the Pommard clone is more on the romance side, where, we got these cuttings from nursery here in Oregon, who got them from a nursery in California. And they're called Pommard, and they taste and they have some of those characteristics of the great wines of Burgundy, but there's not really a scientific way to trace them all the way back to the source.
Got it. Okay, because that was my next question. So what I know of Pommard, and from what I've tasted, we're looking at deep color, intensity of fruit, sort of a bigger style of Pinot Noir.
So the Pommard clone of Pinot Noir is really one of the foundational clones of Oregon Pinot Noir growing. along with Vadensville. It was one of the first selections that was planted in our vineyards here. It really is it's kind of a rich, opulent style of Pinot Noir. It's really well adapted to our location here in the Dundee Hills. A lot of red cherry characteristics, rich tannins. It's a big part of what we do at Winters Hill. And so it's fun to pull it aside and really just do a few barrels all by itself for this wine.
Fantastic. Okay, now it's time to taste. That is amazing. I mean, I'm getting a lot of obviously cherry, but dark fruit also in this, more like a black cherry. And then there's a spiciness in here, not a heat spice, but like, you know, baking spices are coming out of there. Oh my God, this is gorgeous.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about this 2018 vintage and this bottling. It really just has a lot of, I'm calling it dense, you know, it's just got a lot of concentration of flavor.
Yeah, are you getting some cranberry too?
It's got that, I mean, it really has good balance. So it's got that acidity and that lift to the wine. Yeah, so it's got that nice acidity, that cranberry. I get those kind of dried herbs as well that you get on the finish of the wine.
Wow, that I feel like it's a complete meal on its own. There's so many different flavors. I'm like, I don't want to add anything to it because it's so good. What would you pair with this, Russ?
Well, if we want to kind of go for the home run, a good friend of mine went mushroom hunting a couple of weeks ago, and he brought back some mushrooms for Delphine and I. And we grilled up some pork chops and sauteed the mushrooms. And so some wild morels and a pork chop.
I love it. Okay, good idea. I am going to stick with my very balanced meal right here. All right, one more sip, and I can't wait to talk about the next one. This made me really happy. As I took the second sip, I'm like, wait, what was that? It's like another flavor and another flavor. I just need to, actually, we just need to end this video so I can just drink more. All right, so let's see what's next. And so these two wines, all the wine club members are receiving soon. Is that correct?
That's correct. Some of them have already received them. They've got, depending on the level of club you have, but most of our members got 2 bottles of each of these 2 wines in their last shipment, along with 2 bottles of our Pinot Blanc.
Okay. Well, I think I need to be a double member so I can get 4 bottles of everything.
We've got that.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So tell me about the Single Block series, Block 9-115. That sounds like a James Bond movie right there. Block 9-115.
So the 115, that's a clone where it really is a more precise origin of this selection. Okay. And so in Burgundy, the University of Dijon does a lot of research in winemaking and grape growing. They selected some clones and trialed them and found sort of characteristics that can improve the quality. And so, you know, those kind of characteristics are smaller sized berries, because when we're making Pinot Noir, we really love the tiny little berries, because the smaller the berry, the ratio of skin to juice is higher. Yes. You know, we want small clusters, because with Pinot Noir, you're not looking for quantity, you're looking for quality. It was imported into the United States through the University or Oregon State University, through UC Davis, and then given to nurseries and then sold to vineyards.
Okay, Russ, so I have a question about cutting and cloning and making sure that, for lack of a better word, that the integrity, right, of the cutting that you receive is intact. So are the nurseries only allowed to recreate or replant a certain number of time? How is quality controlled?
Well, they have to have extremely rigorous record keeping and organization of their process and of their planting and of their nursery, because like you said, if you don't keep that integrity, then when I'm trying to purchase a certain clone, it might not be that clone.
Yeah.
And you rely on a trustworthy nursery that you work with.
So I'm sure you noticed I'm bouncing back and forth. It's not because there's music behind me. It's because I'm ready to taste this wine. So let's get to it.
All right.
This is like a big, in all the right way wine, right? There's a lot of body to this wine, and it can really pair well with some heavier meats. Like,
I think a lamb, a real like slow roasted style of lamb with some of those vegetables, sweet potatoes and potatoes and carrots, some of that richness and sweetness.
I'm curious, what do you think, what should a consumer expect if they could, right? Because I don't think they can, but if they could wait 5 years for these wines to age? Sure.
Well, you're starting with, the basic characteristics of the wine aren't going to change. Everything's already in there. But what happens as the wines age is the tannins get a little bit smoother and a little bit mellower. In chemical terms, those tannins are kind of linking up with each other inside the bottle and forming these long chains. And that just makes the wine a little smoother on your palate. The bad thing that can happen with aging is losing the fruit character. And that's why we try to make wines that have good acidity, because that acidity preserves the fresh fruit characteristics of the wine.
Through these tastings, you're changing the perception, not the perception, the understanding of Pinot Noir, right? This is what exploring wines is all about to me.
Yeah, for me, that's why we make these wines, is exactly for this, because they're right next to each other, but they have that difference in their character and in their structure, and it's just fun to taste it and then to see how they develop.
Can you elaborate on how you treated Block 9115 versus Pommard clone Block 9?
Sure. So for the Block 9115, as you mentioned, it's got a lot of tannin, it's got a lot of richness and structure to the wine. We destemmed 100% of the grapes that went into that fermenter. So we took the clusters and took the stems off and just fermented the skins and the seeds and the juice. We find that the skins of that clone have enough tannin and structure that we don't need to do a whole cluster fermentation to add more spice. With the Pommard, when you taste the wine, you notice a little bit more of the oak characteristic in the Pommard than you do in the 115. And so we did have one new barrel in the mix in that Pommard clone, and so you get some of that spice that we were talking about. Some of that sort of warmth is coming from that new barrel. In our style of winemaking, we don't want the barrel to be front and center, but it really can kind of lift and support the wines. And to me, this is a great example of that oak really lifting up the wine.
Awesome. So fascinating. All of the tricks and all of it's part science, in my opinion, part intuition, but really knowing the vineyard so that you can decide how best to vinify. I think that's awesome. Russ, as usual, I had a great time. I'm so excited to play with these wines and think about some fun pairings. You'll be getting an email from me with photos of how I pair the wines. All right, till next time. Cheers.
Cheers.